Welcome to No Apologies on Beck. I'm your host, Lori Hinz, and with me remotely tonight is Michael Whatley, state GOP party chairman for the state of North Carolina, the other state with North. And I'm very pleased to have you on the show tonight, Michael. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, this is fantastic. Thanks, Lori.
Well, I thought could talk today about what is going on in the United States with regard to Biden, the Biden economy, the borders, all things nationally, and how it's affecting both North Dakota and North Carolina. First of all, the state of Biden's America is a mess right now, Michael.
Yeah, it's a mess from top to bottom. I mean, when you think about it, 2 years ago, inflation was 1.4%. Gasoline was under $3 per gallon. We had a very secure southern border, and we also had a great standing around the world. And here we are less than 2 years later with Joe Biden, and we are suffering from the highest inflation that we've seen in 40 years. We've got gas prices, diesel prices are at record highs, grocery stores are empty, and when you can find stuff, we're at record high grocery prices. The southern border could not be described as anything other than a human catastrophe. And of course, after Afghanistan, what we're seeing in Russia, what we expect to see in China, our standing in the world has taken a pretty big hit. So when we talk about elections having consequences, this is a real doozy of an example.
It's very, very true. Now, in addition to that, we've got an upcoming midterm election on the way, and people are seeing what is the fruits, if you will, of what all these policies are. And then you add to that the Department of Justice run amok. It's unbelievable. You can't even recognize our country anymore.
Well, I'll tell you what, when we have a Department of Justice and an FBI that are going after a presidential campaign, then going after a president, and now they're going after a former president the way that they are, it just shocks the conscience. And you have to think about them declaring parents that are going to school boards as domestic terrorists. You look at all of the agencies across the board, there's nothing that we've ever seen like what we're seeing at Department of Justice. And the language that is coming out of the White House right now, where they're declaring anybody who's a Republican, anybody who voted for President Trump to be a terrorist or a threat to democracy, it just goes beyond the pale. And frankly, the fact that they're getting a free pass from the mainstream media on this really makes it even worse.
The beauty of alternative media, as in Beck News, is that we can actually talk about these things and not be necessarily as canceled as we could on a national level. So we're just pleased as all get out to have you on the show today. So when we are talking about Biden's America, we are talking about people realizing that, though, as you said, elections have consequences. This upcoming election, are you feeling like the trend is going to be tepid, or do you think that it might be bigger than any of us expects with regard to
I think you do look for it to be big. You know, historically, if you have a first-year president who's under 50% approval in the polls, you have a surge. We have a president right now who's under 40% in the polls. You know, as a state party chair, I will always put cautious in front of my optimism. And I think that we need to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to win our elections. But when you look all across the country, 26% of the people think that we're on the right track. 74% think we're on the wrong track. Inflation has run away. We're seeing higher grocery prices. We're seeing high gasoline prices. And this is having a real negative effect. We've seen numbers down here in North Carolina that the average family is going to spend between $7,500 and $10,000 a year more just to get through this year with their basic necessities and needs. When you talk about our average median household income is $50,000. So, you know, this is 15-20% of your take-home pay is now gone just to pay for the things that you already needed. People are going to be voting on pocketbook issues, and we've never really seen a wave like this except for maybe in 1980.
No, very, very true. And do you think that the GOP messaging has been good? I mean, do you think that our statements with regard to why it's important to vote Republican are accurate?
Yeah, look, I mean, in North Carolina, what we're talking about is we need guardrails. We need guardrails around the White House with a Republican House and a Republican Senate. We need guardrails around the governor's mansion down here with supermajorities in the state House and Senate, as well as our Supreme Court that we're trying to flip over here. But the Republican messaging focusing on the family and making this a family first agenda talking about the need for us to have economic security and educational opportunities is something that every American family cares about.
You touched on that, but we learned in Virginia that education is a huge topic and parents are motivated. I'm wondering if it isn't going to be a lot of mama bears making the difference in this midterm election.
Yeah, we certainly expect that they're going to come out. I mean, we've seen movement across the country in suburban voters. We've seen it in college educated voters. We've certainly seen it with mothers, where people saw what their kids were doing in school because they weren't in school and they were online, and they were shocked and appalled at what they're seeing. Learning loss is a very real concern. We're seeing test scores right now across the country that are down substantially versus where they were just 2 years ago. And we need to be able to get that back. And this is really going to come down to, are we going to be supporting, are the candidates going to be supporting parents and kids, or are they going to be supporting the teachers' unions?
I have also seen the GOP making really a good inroad with regard to just reaching out to different communities. And I think you have at least one community center in North Carolina that the GOP has opened as well, right?
Yeah, we've actually got three. We've got two Black outreach centers, and we've got the first Native American Indian office that the RNC opened in the entire country. I'm a huge believer in this type of outreach. I think that we need to have continual engagement. What we don't need to be doing is showing up with these groups every 4 years and saying, hey, will you vote for us? I think you need to make sure that you are part of the community. People need to understand what the Republican agenda is, and they need to be exposed to our candidates. And I've got to give Chairman Ronna McDaniel a great bit of credit for opening up these centers all across the country.
I think they are very, very valuable. I think it's particularly to those populations. Now, the wide open border, we talked about it. In North Carolina, I don't know if crime has surged there, but every town in the United States of America is a border town right now.
Yeah, well, and we're seeing the rampant escalation in deaths due to fentanyl. It's the #1 killer of males from 18 to 45 right now. We actually have had protests at our state capitol over fentanyl deaths. We're getting the same number of arrests and capturing of fentanyl that they are in every other state. But when you think about what the president has done, where he has opened up the border, we have now seen estimates that as many as 4.5 million illegal aliens have come across the border since President Biden took office. They're shipping them all across the country, including here in North Carolina, and you in North Dakota and everywhere else are receiving these illegal aliens and just being told you're going to have to deal with them and take care of them. It really is a shock to the system that we've got that many folks coming across the border right now.
Welcome back to No Apologies on Beck. I am Lori Hinz, your host, and I am very pleased to be talking with my friend from North Carolina. This is Michael Whatley, who is the state party chairman of the GOP in North Carolina. We are talking politics. We've talked about the nation and what is going on with the state of the United States of America, and I thought we'd drill down a little bit more and find out more about what's going on in North Carolina. First of all, you have a very hotly contested Senate race in North Carolina.
Yeah, we've got Richard Burr is retiring. Ted Budd did a fantastic job in the primary, coming out of it with 58%. And we're very excited about him as a candidate. North Carolina is a true purple state. We've got 30% of our voters are Republican, 34% are Democrat, 35% are unaffiliated. So every election is going to be razor sharp. And we feel like we've got the best candidate going forward. Who's going to be running, and feel like the agenda that he has laid out really matches up well with North Carolina voters.
Can you tell us a little bit about Ted Budd? What is his background that makes him such a great candidate?
Ted grew up on a farm, and he owns a gun store. And so he's, kind of perfect for a lot of mainstream voters in North Carolina. But, he's been a member of Congress for the last 8 years. He's got a very solid voting record. He's been endorsed by President Trump, and really is running as a American first, North Carolina first candidate. So he is where the voters of North Carolina are, and he's doing a fantastic job getting around the state. We have 100 different counties. He visited all 100 of them during the primary, and he's getting back around to all 100 here in the general. So we know it's going to be the most expensive Senate race in the entire country. We're expecting between $250 to $300 million to be spent on TV down here. You know, he has just made a great candidate for North Carolina.
Wow. Well, if he is a farmer and he owns a gun store, he would work really well for North Dakota, too, just so you know. I would be totally fine with Ted Budd here as well. House races. You have, as far as House races, you have 14 congressional districts in North Carolina?
Yeah, so we've got Ted Budd's seat is obviously vacant, and we've got a great candidate who's running there. The other 7 incumbents that we have in the Republican Party are all going to be really fine. And then what we've got is an opportunity with 3 other districts that we think are great pickup opportunities. We want to make sure that we get at least 1 or 2 so we can help contribute to sending Nancy Pelosi back to San Francisco where she belongs.
Well, that is thrilling. I know that there are a bunch of different states where they're looking for pickups like that, but 2, 3, that would be huge in North Carolina.
Yeah, you know, and there are going to be districts that may normally be a Democrat district, you know, D+5, D+6. But in this environment right now, the voters are really not happy with the National Democrats. Nancy Pelosi is under 20% approval rating down here. So we're just making sure that we're taking every one of those Democrat candidates, tying them to Nancy Pelosi, and talking about the Republican agenda with our great candidates.
Can you speak to some of the names of the people who are running in those newer candidates so we can get to know them a little bit here on a national level?
Yeah, so Bo Hines is running to replace Ted Budd in the 13th district. He's been endorsed by President Trump and a very solid candidate. We've got America First candidates like Sandy Smith, who's running in the 1st district up in Northeast North Carolina. And then we've got 2 great veterans, Christian Castelli and Pat Harrigan, running in Greensboro and in Charlotte. And we really feel out of this pack of candidates that we've got great opportunities to get a couple pickups.
I think even across the country, we have had some amazing people step up and decide that they're run. I know there's a lot of military folks like the Luttrells and the people across the country who are stepping forward and making their voice heard and running for office this time around.
Yeah, you know, in North Carolina, we have such a high percentage of our voters who are either in the military families, or veterans. And so that military community really, truly responds to those types of candidates. And of course, you know, we always want to see strong female candidates. You know, if you look at the 15 candidates that the Republicans were able to win in the last election cycle to take over seats, every single one of them was minority, women, or veteran candidates.
Well, it's a beautiful trend. I'm really enjoying seeing the trend of all these new candidates coming forward. So your prospects, you think, so you had 7 safe, and then if you could pick them up, so 10 out of 14 CD districts possibly even becoming Republican?
That's what we're looking for right now. We've got 8 today, and we certainly would like to pick up 1 or 2.
Well, that's thrilling. So in addition to that, you must have statewide offices also, which are up for grabs as well. Yeah, give us the background of your state house, how it's set up with regard to governors and majorities and things like that in your House and Senate.
Sure. So we have a Democrat governor in Roy Cooper, and we have a very simple formula this year. We need to get 3 members of the House additional to what we've got right now in order to get supermajorities. We need to pick up 2 Senate seats for a supermajority in the Senate, and we need to win 1 Supreme Court race in order to get a majority on the North Carolina Supreme Court. And we have fantastic candidates across the board. I feel very strong that we're going to get those supermajorities, and we're going to take the majority on the North Carolina Supreme Court.
So your governor is not up for a re-election this year, but you can definitely neuter anything that he does by having those supermajorities, and that's the goal, I'm assuming.
Yeah, our basic agenda right now is to make sure that we get those supermajorities in the House and the Senate, that we take control of the courts, and then we can have the governor back in his bunker in the basement of the governor's mansion to ride out his last 2 years being totally irrelevant.
That sounds totally irrelevant. Sounds really good. So you have a fairly, is it a purple state? Is it a red state or a blue state? I mean, those of us who know North Carolina kind of look at it as a red state, but I know that you guys have that Democratic governor, and that's a lot of fighting.
Yeah, so we are a true purple state. We are 30% Republican, 34% Democrat, 35% unaffiliated.
Wow.
The thing that we have done as Republicans, though, is we win close elections. If you look back to the 2020 cycle, we won 17 out of 21 statewide races, but out of those 17 races, 13 of them were by 100,000 votes or less. So we have the best grassroots program running right now in terms of our mobilization for midterms that we've ever had. We've already got 7,500 volunteers for our Get Out the Vote team. We've got over 8,000 volunteers for our Protect the Ballot teams. And we feel like we're going to be really able to have all of those 5-minute conversations that are so important for you to have with undecided voters and make sure that we're going to get our voters out and win this cycle.
Well, that is a great track record. If you're good at close close races, that's excellent. You really hit a hot button with me when you talked about your Protect the Ballot team, and I think that is really important. If we learned anything from 2020 and from Virginia, New Jersey, is that we need to have people on the ground protecting those ballots.
Yeah, we were very lucky that in the 2020 cycle, we had built out an election integrity team. We recruited over 500 attorneys statewide, as well as 3,000 volunteers. So we were able to have coverage for early voting locations, for election day precincts, and then for all of the canvases. And then, because we were so aggressive in terms of protecting the ballot in 2020, our numbers really never moved. President Trump always likes to say that he went to bed and had a small lead in North Carolina. He woke up, he had a small lead in North Carolina, and they recounted the votes and he got a small win. So we're going to make sure that we're doing that again this cycle.
Well, it is going to be really interesting to see all across the country the mitigation things that people are doing in different states. I know that, do you have anything particularly coming up in legislation with your House and Senate that you are looking forward to from the State House?
Well, what I will say is this. We took the majorities after the 2010 elections, and we have had a Republican majority or supermajority ever since 2011, which is why we have the #1 economy in the country. We're the #1 state for new businesses and families to move into because we've been able to put together a tax structure that is very favorable for families and farms and small businesses. And we've also got an education infrastructure here in North Carolina that's the best in the Southeast. And we really feel as long as we can continue with the Republican majorities and the Republican agenda, we're going to continue to grow as a state.